Welcome to Creepy Stories, Volume 2. When you picture haunted dolls, more than likely it's the dolls like Chucky or the older porcelain dolls you think about. This is a true story about such a doll, but not a porcelain or Chucky doll. This is a Disney's Frozen Elsa doll that was given as a gift for Christmas. In 2013 in the Houston, Texas area, the doll made headlines when it seemingly became haunted. The desperate family decided to toss the spooky doll out in December of 2019. About a month later, they found it back inside their home, in their living room. The mother told KPRC2 Houston News that her children would not have dug it out of the trash, because it was on the bottom under bags and was impossible for a child to do. After arriving back in the family's home, the doll stopped singing Let It Go in English altogether, but when pressed, would only sing in Spanish now. The family then decided to double bag the creepy doll, and then placed it again, at the bottom of their garbage, which was taken out on garbage day. They left on a family trip immediately after placing the doll in the trash bin, and out for the trash to be picked up. When they returned back home a few days later, Elsa also arrived back home at some point, because she was waiting, in the backyard of their home. Shaken, the family decided to just mail this evil doll to a family friend, in Minnesota, who then taped the haunted doll to the bumper, on the front of his truck. Elsa has not found her way back, yet, at least since February of this year, according to the mother's Facebook updates. Elisa Lam, a Canadian student, at the University of British Columbia, in Vancouver, was last seen on January 31, 2013, in the lobby of the Cecil Hotel, in downtown Los Angeles. She was vacationing through the West Coast, documenting the trip on her blog, and checking in with her parents, every day. On January 31, the calls ceased. Lam had disappeared, vanished into thin air. Her parents quickly arrived to assist in the search and the police began their investigation. But, they had nothing. That February, the Los Angeles Police Department released elevator surveillance footage of Lam before her disappearance. The footage shows Lam behaving oddly in the elevator, as though she was talking with invisible people, peeking around the corner of the door, squatting down in the corner, and strangely, opening and closing the door. Her behavior in the video doesn't help in getting any answers. Authorities are unsure if she is having a psychotic break. Some theorize demonic possession, while others stick with the possibility of being unknown assailants, just out of the camera's view. Not long after Elisa Lam vanished, hotel guests started complaining about the water supply. Sabina Bao spent 8 days at the hotel during the investigation. She states, "The shower was awful," and she goes on to say, "When you turned the tap on, the water was coming black first, for 2 seconds, and then it was going back to normal." She continued, "It had a very funny, sweaty, disgusting taste. It's a very strange taste. I can barely describe it." However, for a full week, nobody complained. She explains, "We never thought anything of it, we thought it was just the way it was here." On February 19, early in the morning, an employee at the hotel climbed to the roof, then with a ladder investigated the water storage tanks at the hotel. That's where police found the naked, decomposing body of Elisa Lam. Her personal effects were found scattered around, nearby. Initially, the medical examiner, who performed the autopsy, ruled it an accidental death. Strangely, the hotel roof is secured with an alarm system and a lock. Lam would have needed a key and an alarm would have sounded. The hotel has a tragic history. Richard Ramirez, aka the Night Stalker, lived on the 14th floor for several months back in 1985. He was found guilty of 14 murders. Jack Unterweger, an international serial killer, is suspected of slaughtering 3 prostitutes during his stay at the hotel in 1991. Before he could stand trial, he killed himself behind bars. A female occupant jumped out of one of the hotel's windows, in 1992, killing herself, and the person she landed on. Elisa Lam's death at the Cecil Hotel shocked the city of Los Angeles in 2013. To this day, nobody knows how she died, or how her body got into that water tank. Several years ago, a young woman lived in an apartment building, where she had several neighbors. One of her neighbors, who lived just across the hall, was a former state park ranger. The man retired just a few years ago. He told the woman, at the beginning of his career, that a young boy had gone missing while on a camping trip with his family. The park rangers orchestrated an extensive search party, but nobody could locate the child. No clues as to what happened to the young boy. Several years passed, and new evidence surfaced. Some of the boy's camping gear had been located. The rangers discovered they had been looking in the wrong area of the park the entire time. The woman's neighbor began to search the forest during his off-duty hours, hoping for more clues. Just outside the state park lived a strange couple, who lived in a small shack. One day, the park ranger had to visit them on another matter. The couple invited him into their cluttered, old home. While talking with the couple, the park ranger spotted they had a strange-looking ashtray sitting on their coffee table. After getting a closer look, he realized it was actually a small human skull. The authorities did a very extensive investigation into the couple not long after. DNA evidence proved that the skull did, in fact, belong to the missing boy. However, he had not been killed by the couple. The old man told the police that he had been out walking in the forest when his dogs began to chew on something laying on the ground. He realized it was a boy. He was already dead. Though it was clear by his body that his death had been fairly recent. Instead of contacting the police about the boy's body, the man took the child's head and painstakingly removed his skin and flesh, and then cut off the top of his skull, so he could make it into an ashtray. The man later took the police to the area where he found the boy's body. It was in 2012, I had just finished my degree, and was back at my parents' house. It was around 3:15 a.m. in the morning, and I was as a freelance writer at the time. I was reading over an article I had just finished. My desk sits against the wall, so when I'm working I'm looking at a wall. To my right is my dresser, to the left is a bookshelf, and behind me, to my back, is my bed. In the floor next to my feet is my dog, a boxer, named Charlie. I've had Charlie for about 2 years. I rescued him from the local shelter. As I was deep into my work, the room became abnormally cold. I could literally see my breath. Charlie raised his head from a deep sleep, and was staring at the wall above the bookshelf, and whimpering. At first it was a clicking noise, click, 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 then the light started flickering. Then Charlie started a low growling, still staring at the same spot on the wall. The hair on Charlie's back raised and his growling intensified. Suddenly, the light flickered once again, then went out. The only light was from my computer screen. I felt this eerie feeling like someone was staring at me. I turned to try to focus my eyes in the dark room. As my head turned, suddenly, something brushed past my arm. At the same time Charlie was now barking and backing up into the area under my desk. Charlie doesn't get intimidated easily. I'm a fairly big guy, and don't scare easily myself, and this terrified me to my core. I was shaking. I didn't see much, just a dark shadow. Me and Charlie left the room and slept on the couch that night. The moment we left my bedroom, the difference in the temperature was startling. The rest of the house was warm and comfortable. The next morning, when I was grabbing clothes to take a shower, the light came on fine and I noticed a weird spot on the wall right where Charlie was staring the night before. It was black, and looked like someone had lit it on fire and left burn marks. It was just a small area about 8 inches wide and about 6 inches tall. I told my dad the next day about it and he opened the wall up thinking a wire may be the culprit. He inspected all the wiring and found nothing. The burn was all on the outside of the wall. He was still not satisfied, so he had his brother, an electrician, look at it. He also said there was nothing wrong. The wiring all was as it should be. My dad and I fixed the wall, and repainted the room, but I never slept in the room again and Charlie won't even come near the doorway. I have no idea what visited me and Charlie that night or why. I work in the mental health field. We were working with a schizophrenic patient. He said that he was seeing a girl in his room, and he said she was talking to him. Of course, we believed this to be a hallucination, since he was living alone. We, me and the doctor, decided to challenge his delusion in hopes of jarring him into reality, and had him take a picture of her so we could meet her. In his next visit, he brought a picture. To our horror, the picture was of him on his couch and next to him was a strange, creamy ghost of an image, of a girl hovering behind him. He was sitting on the couch with his head down, very depressed, and she was hovering behind him, in what appears to be haunting him. We both literally fell out of our chairs. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. We had everyone examine the photo, but we knew it was real because this patient was very low functioning, and not capable of manipulating something to that magnitude. At this point, the doctor broke his silence and told the patient that this is outside of his scope, medication won't help this, and that he may want to consult someone at his local church for spiritual direction. Back in the early 1900s, a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto was given a doll by a servant that worked for his father as a gift. The boy named the doll Robert. The boy, whose nickname was Gene, and the doll became inseparable. However, soon, strange things began happening. While the doll, at first, seemed like just a normal doll, it soon became evident that there was something more to this doll. It wasn't long before terrifying events started taking place. The first incident was when the boy, only 10 years old at the time, woke to find the doll sitting at the end of his bed, staring at him. Moments later, his mother hears his screams for help and sounds of furniture being thrown about in her son's bedroom. The boy screamed for help, begging for his mother to save him. When she finally was able to force the locked door open, she found her son curled up, in utter fear on his bed. The room was a disaster, and the doll was sitting at the foot of the bed. "Robert did it," the boy said, crying. The parents could often hear the boy upstairs, talking to the doll, and often could hear another, deeper voice, answer back. They reported seeing the doll speak, and even witnessing its face change expressions. The boy grew up, and kept the doll with him throughout his life. And when his parents passed away, he moved back into his childhood home, with his wife, Anne. He decided the doll needed a room all of his own, and placed the doll in a room that had a window, overlooking the street. Anne didn't like the doll in the house, and she couldn't pinpoint her uneasy feelings. She wanted her husband to lock the doll up in the attic, away from everyone. He reluctantly agreed, and put the doll into the attic. Apparently the doll was not happy with being locked away in the attic. Visitors would often ask the couple, who is in their attic, since they heard footsteps running around frantically up there, and some even said they heard devilish giggling coming from the attic area. Neighborhood children reported seeing the doll, watching them from a window upstairs, and said it would mock them, as they walked to school. Each time someone reported to him that his doll was doing something, he would find the doll sitting in a chair that overlooks the street, and take him back to the attic, and lock the door. But somehow, the doll would end up right back at the window watching the street. Robert Eugene Otto died in 1974, and the house was later sold to another family, who had a 10-year-old daughter. The little girl was delighted to find the doll, hidden away in the attic. Her excitement ended quickly, when she started telling her parents that the doll was alive, and that the doll wanted to hurt her. Her parents reported that their daughter woke often screaming in the middle of the night, screaming in fear, saying the doll was moving around in her room. Her parents gave the doll away. Many believe the doll, a gift, was given with sinister intentions. The servant who gave the doll to the boy, all those years ago, was mistreated by her bosses, and wanted to punish them, so she cursed the doll, with voodoo, and black magic. Robert now sits in a glass case, in a museum in Key West, Florida. The doll continues to taunt and scare those who come to view him. It's believed he doesn't like to have his picture taken. Many report their cameras become inoperable when they tried to snap an image of the doll, and once they get away from the museum, their camera mysteriously starts working again. Staff members to this day report seeing the doll's facial expressions change, hear demonic giggling, and have even seen him put his hands up on the glass. When I was about 13, I was up watching a movie on my computer. It was about 2 or 2:30 in the morning, and everyone else in the house was asleep. I got really thirsty, and walked down the hallway, to the kitchen to grab a drink. The hallway was dimly lit, by a lamp, at the end of the area. The lamp threw off just enough light to keep it from being pitch black, but still area is not brightly lit. I grab my drink, and sipping as I walk back down the hallway. I get this weird feeling that someone is watching. I get this sudden urge to turn, so I do, and this white thing drifts right by me. I'm by my room, so I dart in, where the light is bright, and close the door. I did a little research, and found that in the 80s, a guy once rented our home, was arrested for kidnapping, raping and murdering a bunch of children. He was also suspected of murdering his wife, although they never found her body. He told the police that she ran away, but there's no trace of her anywhere. I don't know what I seen in the hallway that night, but considering the history of the home, it was either the ghost of a murdered child or his wife. My dog, Zelda, never barks. When I first got her, I thought there may be something wrong with her, because she doesn't ever bark. It turns out, she was just a really chilled out dog. One evening, we had just eaten dinner, and I was doing dishes, and she starts barking. I go into the living room to see what she's barking at, and she's just sitting about 3 feet from the front door, barking. Then my doorbell rang 3 times and stopped. I opened the front door and nobody was there. Then my dog starts pacing, and growling. Again, this is not how my dog acts. She's never done this, and I've had her over 8 years. After a few minutes, she calms down, and we get back to our regular routine. The next morning, I get up for work, take Zelda out for her morning walk, and I run into Debbie, the neighbor across the street. She starts telling me about my next door neighbor. She says, he killed himself yesterday, in his home. She told me he shot himself in the head and died instantly. After talking with her a bit more, I found out, this was during the exact time that we had the incident at the door. When I was around 4, my parents purchased a new house. It was an older house but was nice enough. The neighborhood was a diverse area, with older and younger people. I was very young when we moved there, but my dad told me what happened. He said, as soon as we moved in, he would hear me in my room giggling. And when he would come in and ask what is funny, I would tell him the kids were funny. He said many times he would get up in the morning and come to wake me, and I'd be curled up, in the fetal position, in the closet sleeping. He would ask why I was sleeping in the closet, and I wouldn't remember how, or why I was sleeping there. He said I did that quite often. He said that I refused to walk out the front door. I would scream and cry, and he, or my mother, would have to literally carry me in or out. When you come in the front door, to the right was a brick wall which separated the living room from the dining area. My dad told me I was scared of that wall and would not go anywhere near it. After several months of living there, my dad started renovations. One of his projects was to remove that brick wall. When he started tearing it down, he had to contact the police. There were 3 sets of bones inside. All were small children. The police investigated, but they never could determine who the children were, or who killed them. The home had been rented out numerous times, and sold so many times, that they could not determine much. The police did let me dad know, that they did determine the bones were really old, and had been in that wall for at least 50 years. My dad said, after the investigators took the bones out, all the weird behavior I had previously stopped. That concludes Volume 2 of Creepy Stories Volume 2. Keep your eye out for Volume 3, coming soon. If you enjoyed these stories, please subscribe, like and share.